Hi, I'm Steve Gustafson, co-founder of the PRCA. You may not recognize me now with my long hair. I'm growing it out for a cause, locks of love, and I'll be back to my short hair in no time. But I've been asked a couple of times over the years to explain the history of the PRCA and what kind of got things started. And in order to tell the story, I need to go back to 1999, year 2000, which precedes the PRCA founding. I have a ropes challenge course business, and I was doing team building, ropes challenge course, facilitation, and I was also getting into training, design, installation, inspection services as well. And this all kind of coincided with the newest standard that came out March in 1994 by the Association for Challenge Course Technology. It was a smaller pamphlet, but it was the efforts of a lot of people that were in the industry to get to that forefront, because before then it was kind of like a Wild West story. Getting into the industry in '86, I was running ropes courses and doing work before that first standard in '94 by about 8 years. And there were people that I learned from on their shoulders of effort before even then. So when '99 rolled around and I wanted my company to become a builder, we were now about 4 or 5 years into the new standard with the ACCT, and they were having what was initially called preferred vendor members, then they changed it to professional vendor members. And I believe it was '99 or early 2000, I sent in my application to be reviewed to become one of these professional vendor members. Now, the impetus for that was a little bit of a multifold. One, I was a push to stay in business for marketing. I think a lot of the builders that were signing up for PVM status were doing it just for that purpose, for credibility, for marketing, and being part of an association for professional development. And I was the same way. My major push was, at the time, Robert Monahan, through Hibbs Hallmark, was telling me he couldn't renew my liability insurance as a builder unless I was in the queue to become a PVM with ACT, or had passed the peer review process and actively was a PVM. And I went through that process, and to be honest, I kind of found it intrusive. I know it's a peer review and it's voluntary, but I thought they were asking a lot of questions about my business, my finances, my client lists, that were a little bit more too personal and got beyond the status of my building abilities. Now, I'm not here to compound on that. That's water underneath the bridge. But it is a foundational context for kind of how we got things started. So I was younger, could have been a little adversarial, but I sent in my application, went to the conferences, tried to do workshops, tried to participate, donated money to be used for scholarship programs. It just seemed everywhere I turned, I got denied. And then officially, my application for PVM was denied. And I remember getting the letter and thinking, what for? And there was bullet points. And again, I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but one of them was insurance wasn't a good enough reason to become a PVM. I was producing videotapes on training and doing things that way. I had been outspoken and challenged some of the decisions and philosophies of the ACCT over the years. And it kind of challenged some people and said, why do you do things the way you do? And that didn't meet with very good feedback. So it was denied early on, and I was told to wait a year and try again. So I waited a year, tried again, and again, now another year later, I was again denied PVM access. But Robert Monahan still wrote my insurance again for another year, so be it. It didn't put me out of business, and that was fine. But then it came to be 2002, and again a second year being denied. And now at this point, it was no longer me talking to the president and the board or the executive director. I had to talk to their attorney So it had eroded to a point where they wouldn't even talk to me. It was just me to their attorney. I'm not going to say names. They know who they are. But then after a third year in 2003, I was still getting flack, saying, nope, people still don't want you in the association. Now, I was of mind of the association was supposed to be for the membership, that the members were here for the association. So after 3 years of being rejected, based on everything but my building and other than my training, it seemed to be more political and subjective than objective. So I thought I was going to give it just about another 6 months. I'd check in again. Meanwhile, Robert Monahan is telling me he can't rent my insurance and I can't renew. That would put me out of business. So we found a guy named Ray Snyder from Snyder Insurance, and he said he would write our policy. And kind of through writing the policy for our ropes courses through another agent, he kind of said to me, well, do you have some kind of a document of standards or policies of how you build so we can kind of cement the policy against that? And I said, well, no, but yes, I have my own internal documents. So I thought I said, okay, I'd create them for him. So I did, and I produced them, and I gave them, and he says, this is great. Good information. You know, it shows me the kind of cable, it shows me the kind of clamps, talks technical stuff, I love it. But is there a body of people or a board or an association that could oversee this document and kind of then round out? It'd be you as a builder, you got the building's specifications, and then a board to oversee it, a little bit more professional. Could you do that? And I said, well, I think I can. So at the time, I reached out to Joel Cryer, who had some resistance with the ACCT, I think. But whatever his issues were, they were his. But he did tell me he wanted to stay independent. And I went to my lead builder at the time that was employed through me, Wes Hunter. And I went to Wes and Joel and said, do you guys want to be co-founders of a new ropes course association with me? And they said, sure, we think competition would be good. So I said, all right. I went with Ray and said, let's get things triggered. Let's get the thing ready to rock and roll. We created a document. We got ready to launch the PRCA formally with an attorney and form a corporation in Illinois. And I knew once I pulled that trigger, there'd be no turning back. So after 3.5 years, I reached out to the ACCT one more time. And I got a response back in a matter of a day or two through email saying, nope, there's still resistance to you being a PVM in this association. So I've got Robert Monahan going to cancel my insurance. I've got the ACCT not letting me come in to be a PVM, which was a prerequisite to keep my insurance with Robert. And it was just obvious it wasn't going to go anywhere. So with a final denial after 3.5 years of kind of waiting in the wings, being patient, I said, fine, whatever. We triggered the new insurance. I called up Robert Monahan, canceled mine with him, and the PRCA was launched. So I know it's been said that people think I started the association as a way to stick it to ACCT, but really it was designed and started out of necessity because the ACCT was not there for me. And once I got the association started, I found out that it wasn't there for a lot of people. So we started the PRCA and things got pretty heated. Now, I know that when we formed our first standard, I couldn't go to the ACCC document and just use their standard. That would be theft, plagiarism, whatever you want to call it. So kind of going back to some educational foundations that I have, I decided to go back and find all original sources. I went back before ACCT, I went back before AEE, I went back into the original Outward Bound era days, and I found original documents for wire rope, utility poles, clamps, the Cordage Institute. I mean, I went to all precedent sources. So that way it can never be argued I stole anything. Or the PRCA even stole anything. We wanted a standard that would stand on its own. And the initial documents, it was even referenced the standard, the organization, and the stamp of where we got the standard from. So it was pretty well documented that we went to all original sources to form our standard. Now, I did have a good working knowledge from some of the builders I'd worked with in the years. I wanted to thank them. But we have a new standard, a new association, out of necessity, not spite, out of necessity. So in 2004, 2005, the PRCA enjoyed kind of a new startup energy. And we were finding more and more stories like myself were true. And I think it was in 2004, there was a climbing wall incident in Missouri. And I think the particulars were there was a gal on an artificial climbing wall that was moving around, and they had duct tape over the clear coating of the cable. It didn't get inspected, so when she sat back, she fell and got injured. And at that time, I kind of thought to myself, if Missouri starts regulating climbing walls and challenge courses and zip lines, that would set up a precedent for all 50 states to set up their own standard. And as a builder, I thought that would be complicated to have to build the 50 individual standards. And I had recalled ACCT was talking about going to ANSI and getting an ANSI standard at one point. But they had never pulled the trigger. They had talked about it for years, but never had done it. So I thought, well, we have a PRCA platform now. We should go to ANSI and see if we could develop a standard, and we'd have one standard for all 50 states to follow. That seemed to make more sense to me. So I called ANSI. I think the name was Jim Thompson I talked to at the time, and just clarified, are there any workings or ongoings or standards in the process from ACCT? And he said no, there was not. He had recalled talking to him a couple times, but didn't say they had anything active in the works. So I went back to our board, which was Wes and Joel and I at the time, and said, do you guys think we should go for ANSI accreditation and be an accredited standards developer? And they said, sure, why not? They didn't know what to do or how to go about it, but they encouraged me to go for it and give it a try. Now, in 2005, I had gone from about 15 builds down to one, because there was this kind of a mindset in the industry that if you weren't a PVM with ACT, you couldn't build. But that was the eminent kind of thought through the industry, is you had to be a PVM or you couldn't build. So I'd gone from 15 projects on an annual basis with inspections and builds down to one. So I had a lot of time on my hands. And with that time, and with Joel and Wes's blessing, I started to research the process to become an ANSI accredited standards developer via the PRCA. So I started that process. I worked very long hours with Jim at ANSI, back and forth documents, open sourcing, making sure our policies and procedures weren't too dominant. There's a whole checklist you got to follow. And I think I bounced back 4 or 5 renditions of policies, and then Jim said, I think you're ready to go to the next level. So we went to the next level, we got our policies reviewed, went through their board, and next thing you know, we got on December 3rd of 2005 our accreditation with ANSI to be the industry's first accredited standards developer. That was really a big deal because it brought a lot of credibility to us as an association and the industry. Now, instead of working with us, it appeared the ACCT wanted to get us get our status revoked. And sure enough, the ACCT filed an appeal with ANSI to get all of our effort revoked and denied and overturned. And that became a battle of on and off for the next years. Meanwhile, once we got the accreditation, ACCT ran out and they hurried up and they got theirs like July of 2006. So after years of doing nothing, then they came along and about 7 months later followed our lead, became a standards developer as well. Meanwhile, they tried to get us revoked and they got denied, and we're still a standards developer to this day. So once we're a standards developer, we took our standards and started doing what's called the consensus body, which has got a balance between builders, operators, other special interests in the group, or just basic operators and general people in the industry. We offered spots for people to act to be on, and they denied it. They didn't want to be part of it. So this went on now from 06, 07-ish through 2014, when we first got the American National Safety Standard from ANSI, was with the PRCA. 2 years before anything ACT had done. Now through that process, we had tried to work with ACT, we had tried to harmonize, bring them on board, and it was no, 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 no. We were a little bit resistant, they were a little bit resistant. There were some ideas floated to develop a third association and have that third association handle everything, which to me at the time I voted against because it sounded like duplication of effort, duplication of cost. Seemed like it'd be a waste of money and waste of time. But that went on and on and on. Other appeals with ACT, with ANSI and ACT and us. It just seemed to throw a lot of good money after an empty hole. When we got the American National Safety Standard in March of 2014, we were told that there can't be two standards. Then ACCT came out and said, yes, there can. Well, what we found out was there is only one standard per designated level. The difference is there's ACCT, ANSI standard, that's American National Standard, but above that is the PRCA, ANSI, American National Safety Standard. So the ACT standard's one designation less than the PRCA standard is how I understand it. So with PRCA getting their American National Safety Standards accredited developer status in December of 05, we moved on to getting our standard through consensus in 06, and that went on through 14. Meanwhile, trying to work with the ACCT, the PRCA kept getting appeals, and they kept trying to get our standard revoked. So it was still very adversarial. We were trying to close the gap between the two associations and come together, but they tended to keep wanting to rift us and keep us apart and kind of perpetuate a fight. That's an opinion. Maybe there's others out there. But we were trying to protect our membership, and we were a resource to the industry where, from my personal experience, the ACCT was there to protect their PVMs and kind of constrain the industry and raise the bar for entry, kind of keeping the industry from growing. Maybe it's potato, I don't know. But it seemed like the context or presence didn't seem to be true to the spirit of what the membership, or at least what I was hearing when I was a member. So one covers employees and guests, and all the standard went through peer review. That's the PRCA, American National Safety Standard. It's also been cited by OSHA when it's levied some fines against some programs that had employees get injured. And then beneath that tier, you have a lesser ACCT, American National Standard designation. So we're the secretariat, the PRCA is, of the American National Safety Standard, and they're the secretariat of the American National Standard. Sounds like a really fine point, but it's actually a very, very big difference. We're kind of small and mighty, but the more we look at what we do, we found that we're a platform for people that don't have a voice in the other association. Some key differences are going to be that our association, the PRCA, we believe exists for the industry rather than the industry exists for the PRCA. And how do I mean that? I mean it in that our board's voluntary, the association does not reimburse us for travel, does not reimburse us for anything we do for the association, and our board positions are voted on by the members of the association, not just a vote of only the builders. So if you look at it from that way, if only PVMs vote for an association of hundreds or thousands of people, you have a very skewed optic of 41 people who have maybe could be argued a conflict of interest, because everything they vote for or making the standard, they stand to have monetary gain because they're the only builders that can deliver that service. So my energy to this day, even with the PRCA, is not about trying to stick it to somebody else or attack another association. It's devised around trying to be here as a resource for the industry so the industry can grow and evolve on its own, and we're a resource and an accent to that growth, not that everybody has to look to us to develop that growth. We believe it belongs in the private sector. We just provide guidance. Now, anybody can join the PRCA. It's not just builders only. It's operators, it's attorneys, it's assurance agents, it's summer camp staff, it's students in colleges. We try to be a resource, and we're doing a lot with a very tight budget. Again, your money is not going to big, grandiose, reimbursing builders that should be already able to cover their own expenses to go to a conference. We have conferences too. So anyways, I think there's good attributes about both associations. You got to gauge what's right for you. But I believe in more the PRCA side than the other, because I think the premise of our foundation is solid and good. Back in 2006, we had a board member on who was trying to build a ropes course and was trying to find a product called a strand vise. And it's a dead-end device to help terminate a cable on a utility pole, on a bolt or a tree or whatnot. And the source they gone to said they can no longer sell them the product. In fact, the product was being removed from the shelves. And the manufacturer of that product, that strand vise, McLean, said that they didn't endorse their product for use on a ropes course. Now, this is news to me as a builder. Now, I didn't use them at the time, but I know a lot of builders did. So I called them up and said, hey, what's the get-go? And the representative there sent me a letter dated in 2006, referencing a letter they had sent in 2000 to the ACCT saying, do not use our product in your industry. And from what I could gather, calling other PVMs, they didn't know about that letter. So when we found that letter, we kind of felt the need the ethical need to bring it to the attention of the industry, which by circumstance somehow made us the watchdog of ACCT, which I didn't like that situation. And sure enough, they didn't like that situation. And a bad situation between two associations eroded and even got worse. But there are a lot of ropes courses built between 2000 and 2006 with strand vices that were against the manufacturer's recommendations. And we don't feel a builder has the right to oversee what a manufacturer approves for their product to use or not use. So we made public that 2000 letter because McLean gave it to us. We also made available the 2006 letter that McLean sent to us. We now felt that it was improper for information to be withheld from the industry, which went to our argument that they possibly or allegedly weren't really there for the industry's benefit, but they were there for the builder's benefit. And that didn't sit well with me, I'll be very honest. It didn't sit well with a lot of people. And to this day, dead-end devices are still being used. I've been told through PVMs that a new manufacturer approves of their brand of strand vise or dead-end device, because strand vise is a trademark, it's a brand like Kleenex, but it's not all tissue. So a dead-end device is more the generic term that looks like a strand vise, but we've never seen that letter of approval produced anywhere. I don't know if that's really the case or not. Another example that affected me, which also, again, prompted me to still focus on the PRCA, was I had gone to an ACT conference in, I want to say Denver. I can't recall the year. And I know at the time they were looking at doing their standards. They were developing their training. I'd offered to be on their training committee and was denied. Just like for the last 15 years, I've been denied to be on their Zipline canopy tour committee. But I wanted to go to the workshop and listen to how they're going to do the training and kind of see where they were going. And I was shocked, to say the least, when an active board member approached me, told me that they were acting on behalf of the board and the board's wishes, and uninvited me from participating in the workshop. They did not let me attend the workshop that was overseeing the industry's training standards. I just couldn't believe it, that my dues to this association was now being used to browbeat me and my company from participating at a conference which I paid for, which my dues was supporting, and I'm being uninvited from workshops. Well, the damage had been done. And I just really thought it was an inappropriate way to handle a member that was paying dues still. Even though I had been denied PVM, I was still a dues paying member, conference paying member, and was uninvited to participate. So when I was at this conference, being uninvited from workshops, I then at the time talked to the president of the board, and he said, well, I'll guarantee you get your PVM review done. I'll do it myself, and no one's going to question my results, and I can guarantee you're going to pass. But in order to pass, I need you to do away with the PRCA. Don't support it. I need you to disband it, make it go away. And I was really bound ethically to support the association and the people who gave us our dues. But boy, it would have been easy for me as a business. I could have been a PVM years ago, been through all this headache, had my name out there, gained recognition, been on conference committees that to this day I keep getting denied. But how do I wrestle with looking at my conscience in the mirror, knowing that I sold out the people who believed in the PRCA and me when we started it for my own personal gain? And that's just not who I am, so I didn't do it. No deal. So when people say my name and that I bailed on the ACCT and I'm just sticking it to them, from where I sit, they bailed on me. And they bailed on a lot of other small builders that were independent, that weren't PVMs or didn't have the money to do that, or didn't want to do it for politics, whatever the reason. They no longer represented me. So I stopped paying them dues. When I see people or I get challenged by members of that association today and just tell me to go F myself and crawl underneath a rock in a hole, I don't think they really understand what they're supporting. I've got all the documents to prove it. I got all the letters, the emails, original sources. I got it all. So I apologize if this sounds a little tenuous. I don't want it to be. It just happens to be the facts. And that's how the PRCA got started. That's why I'm so adamant about supporting it. That's why I'm so adamant about protecting it and feel that it's a superior association over some others. I do think having the PRCA here has been very good competitively because we were the first to do the ANSI process. We were the first to get an ANSI standards developer status. We were the first to get an ANSI accredited national safety standard. We were the first to do virtual resources and do video learning online. We were the first to do an electronic standard, which got automatically emailed to our clients. We were just first in a lot of things that a larger association wasn't. So the PRCA has been small but mighty over the years, and we like to think we perpetuated positive change for the industry by pushing the envelope and doing things that we've been hearing and listening to from our membership. So the PRCA is open to anybody, builders or non-builders. It's a simple $85 membership online, $250 for an organization, which is good for 4 people from an organization. We've got conferences, we've got peer review, vendors, and we're trying to do right by the industry. So we welcome your support. So there in the recollection of my knowledge is the history of the PRCA, how we got formed, kind of the benchmark steps along the way, some of the things that affected me as an individual company that drove my passion to support an association for the true industry, giving the vote to the industry of our direction, rather than just having the dominance of builders dictate the standard the whole rest of the industry had to follow. So in retrospect over the years, I think about my need as a builder to create a new association and how that benefited many other camps and other builders over the years. And the situations I've been faced, it's been difficult. I think I'd probably still support the same decisions I did again today. Trying to be true to myself, true to what's right and wrong. And I hope that you can appreciate that and you join us with your support. So in conclusion, that's the history of the PRCA. That kind of got us how to be over the last 20 years from our formation in 03 my problems with another association since 99-2000. So here we are in 2020, 20 years for me, 17 years for the PRCA, and we're still going strong.